On today's episode, I'm going to tell you the story of a man who would enlist in the U.S. Navy at the age of 16. A man who would see combat action in 2 major wars. A man who is one of 7 men in U.S. naval history to be awarded the Silver Star, Navy Cross, and the Medal of Honor. A man who is regarded as the most decorated enlisted man in U.S. naval history. This is the story of BMC James E. Williams. James Elliott Williams was born on November 13, 1930, to parents of Cherokee heritage. At an early age, James was moved by his parents to Darlington, SC, and it was there that he was raised and would graduate from St. John's High School in 1947. Later that year, James convinced a county clerk to alter his birth certificate, which allowed him to enlist in the U.S. Navy at the age of 16. He was quoted with saying that he thought there was nothing better than serving my country and getting paid for it. James would receive basic military training at Naval Training Center, San Diego. It was also in San Diego where he would receive his first assignment, which was aboard an LST that was buoyed in San Diego Harbor. This assignment wasn't easy on the young sailor, and he was miserably bored, as he wanted to see the world. He would admittedly tell others that he wasn't the poster boy for discipline early in his naval career. He said that an old chief told him that he had to learn to take orders, even if you disagree with them, or you wouldn't be respected when you give them later. He credited this with the newfound focus on being a good sailor, with the sharpest knife and the shiniest shoes. It was around this time that he met his future wife, Elaine Weaver. They got married in 1949 and would go on to have 5 children together. From 1950 to 1952, he would be assigned to the destroyer USS Douglas H. Fox in support of the Korean War. He would be part of numerous landing parties aboard small boats launched from the ship. These raiding parties were focused on riverine warfare, where they would operate within inland waterways and engage the enemy in small crafts and coastal defensive positions. This experience would come in handy 14 years later during the Vietnam War. Following the Korean War, he would be assigned to various naval vessels before volunteering for combat in Vietnam. By April 1966, he was a bosun's mate first class and would be assigned to the River Squadron 5, where he was given command of the PBR-105. PBRs, also known as Patrol Boat River, were small boats specifically designed for the shallow, weed-filled intercoastal waterways of Vietnam. These boats generally had a crew of 4 to 5, which consisted of the boat captain, gunner's mate, engineman, and a seaman, all of whom were trained to fill the role of any of the other men if needed. The armaments typically found on PBRs were twin .50 caliber machine guns forward, a single machine gun at the rear, 2 light machine guns and grenade launchers on each side, as well as M16s, shotguns, handguns, and hand grenades. Williams was tasked with intercepting arms and supply shipments, as well as protecting the locals from the Viet Cong in the Mekong River Delta. On October 31st, Williams said he was expecting a relax and recreation patrol alongside another PBR, PBR-101, before his forward gunner would yell that there were 2 fast-moving boats crossing ahead of them. The PBRs began chasing the 2 sampans before they broke off in different directions. Williams commanded the 105 to follow the sampan that was heading north, and they were able to sink it before it could enter a nearby river. The fast-moving PBRs would then focus on the other escaping boat. They quickly gained on the enemy vessel and were about to open fire when it would make a quick turn into a narrow canal. The PBRs were too wide to follow the enemy down the canal, so Williams referenced a map where he noticed that there was only one place where the other boat could come out. They made their way about 1/3 of a mile at top speed to intercept the fleeing boat. As they rounded the corner, the crews of the PBRs would see a large staging area with countless enemy boats and men. Williams knew that he could not slow the boat down enough to make a turn, and head back the way they came, so he had the PBRs racing at full speed toward the enemy. The enemy were disrupted from taking careful aim at the U.S. patrol by the wake caused by the PBRs making abrupt maneuvers. The enemy were in a state of disbelief and confusion by the PBRs racing directly toward them. Under heavy enemy fire coming from all directions, the PBRs would zigzag as they made their way through the middle of the enemy formation while simultaneously returning fire. The chaos caused by the swift attack by two lone boats would lead to the enemy missing their targets. In fact, it was reported that the enemy inflicted casualties on their own. As the two boats broke through the enemy concentration and rounded the next corner, they were astounded to find a second staging area. Knowing there was no way out, they just had to fight. Williams said that he crisscrossed and turned the PBR and did whatever he could to get them off their backs. While fighting the enemy, Williams requested fire support from armed helicopters. While waiting for them, he continued to direct his men to put up a fight. Before the helicopters arrived, the PBRs continued to engage the enemy and damaged or destroyed over 50 enemy sampans and 7 junks. Williams and the crew of the two PBRs engaged in a fierce battle against an enemy that had them outnumbered. They not only had to fight off the enemy aboard many vessels, they also had to withstand fire from automatic weapons and snipers in well-concealed positions along the shore. Once the helicopters arrived, the waterborne threat had been eliminated, but the men of the PBRs still faced an enemy in fortified and heavily disguised positions on land. As night was falling, Williams took the risk and brought the PBRs dangerously close to the shoreline so they could find and illuminate enemy positions with their searchlights, which allowed the helicopters to destroy the threats. When the dust settled on the 3.5-hour battle, the enemy had lost 65 boats and approximately 1,200 men. Miraculously, the U.S. patrol did not lose a single man. For his extraordinary heroism and exemplary fighting spirit in the face of grave risk, BM-1 Williams was awarded the Medal of Honor by President Johnson at the Pentagon on May 14, 1968, the year after he retired from military service. In 1969, he was appointed a U.S. Marshal for the District of South Carolina, where he served until May of 1977. He then became an instructor and national armorer at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glyco, GA, before returning to the District of South Carolina. In 1980, he became a programs manager at the U.S. Marshals Service headquarters in Washington, D.C., where he stayed until his retirement. BMC Williams passed away on October 13, 1999, on the Navy's 224th birthday. He is buried at the Florence National Cemetery in Florence, South Carolina.